Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We were having a little bit of technical difficulty, but you will see that there are two polls that you can go ahead and start answering, and we'll just give it a few seconds since we're running slightly behind. So which of the following best describes you and your organization? I see people are already starting to answer.
Audio recording for this meeting has begun.
And please choose the answer that best describes any agricultural-related injuries, fatalities experienced by someone that you know. Great. People are answering, and since we're at 3:05, I think we will, so let me just summarize here. It looks like most people are safety and health professional, are from a safety and health professional organization, and we have a good amount of people from youth-focused organizations. And people do know of children and adults who have had injuries and fatalities from agricultural-related experiences. Thank you so much for filling those in. I think I'm going to move right now to our main presentation. Again, welcome for coming, and thank you for your patience for those couple of minutes of needing to wait for the technical difficulties. But we're working well now, so you have called into a webinar that's sponsored by Children's Safety Network, and it's Farm Safety for Children and Youth, Risks and Rewards. My name is Marla Van Oor. I will be your moderator for this session. I've been a nursing leader at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for a number of years. During my career there, I've had responsibility over the Trauma and Injury Prevention Program, and currently I am working for the Department of Psychiatry as a Director of Nursing for Special Projects. And of course, I am a member of the Children's Safety Now Alliance. So this project is supported by the Health Resources and Services Administration, also known as HRSA, of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services under the Child and Adolescent Injury and Violence Prevention Resource Centers Cooperative Agreement. The information or content and conclusions are those of the authors and should not be construed as the official position or policy of, nor should any endorsements be inferred by HRSA, HHS, or the U.S. government. Okay, so before we start with introductions of the speakers, I'm going to turn this over to Jenny, who will help us all with some technical tips.
Thank you,
Jenny.
Marla. Hello, welcome everyone. Today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer speakers. Should you have any issues with hearing us on your computer, please use the information in the audio notes on the left side of your screen to join us on a muted phone line. All questions and comments need to be submitted through the Q&A pod you also see on the left-hand side of your screen, and we will respond to them as needed or at the end of our session today in the question and answer discussion section. And there are many files and web links that are available to you to access that will be referenced during the event today. If you have any issues, please let us know in the Q&A pod. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers for the session today. Amy Rademacher is a leader in farm safety education with nearly 20 years devoted to sharing rural health and farm safety education. She is based at Carle Hospital in Illinois and is recognized nationally as a leading expert in community-based agricultural safety programs and has received numerous awards, including the 2017 Practitioner Achievement Award from the International Society of Agricultural Safety. She, her husband, and their two young children live on 5 acres, and Amy is actively involved in her family farm. Marsha Salzwiedel is a project scientist and agricultural youth safety specialist at the National Children's Center for Rural and Agricultural Health and Safety, which is part of the National Farm Medicine Center in Marshfield, Wisconsin. Marsha is project manager for the Agritourism Safety Project, the Childhood Agricultural Safety Network, and is also the principal investigator for the Agricultural Youth Work Guidelines Project. She earned her doctoral degree in educational leadership from Edgewood College in Madison, and Marsha also grew up on a farm, and she and her family still own and operate a family farm. And as has been mentioned, please put questions in that Q&A pod whenever you think of it, and we'll answer those questions at the end. I would now like to turn things over to Marsha to get started.
Thank you so much, Marla. So we would like to get started with just a couple more polling questions just to kind of help us to understand a little bit about what your views are, and then we can kind of help tailor the presentation to you. So the first question is how big of a problem is child youth agricultural injuries and fatalities in your opinion? The second question then is how preventable do you think that child and youth injuries and fatalities are on farms? And we'll give you just a minute or so to be able to respond to those questions. It looks like, so we have about 20% that think it's a minor problem, 56% think it's a moderate problem, and 22%, 23% think it's a major problem. And then as far as preventable, 72% strongest vote is for very preventable, 16% is all preventable, and 12% somewhat preventable. So that's great. Numbers are still going up just a tad, I see. But it looks like most people feel that these injuries are moderately preventable and that, that they're a moderate problem and that they're very preventable. So if we can go on then from there, we'll get started on the presentation. So before we actually get into actual numbers of injuries and fatalities and some of those types of things, we want to talk a little bit about what the numbers are on farms and ranches and children in agriculture. And one of the things that I do want to mention is we're going to talk about the fact that there's 22 million people employed in agricultural-related fields, and that there are 2 million farms in the United States. And when we talk about farms, we're going to use that term inclusive of ranches and other types of agricultural production as well today. So even though we're going to say just farms, we are going to indicate that, or we are going to be inclusive of ranches and different types of agricultural operations. We do know that almost 900,000 children and youth live on farms, and that more than half of those children that live on farms actually work on the farms they live on. We know that about 250,000 more youth are hired to work on farms that don't actually live there. And then to really jump the numbers of children that we see on farms, we know that over 23 million children and youth visit farms every year. And that number is so high because in recent years, the number of farms that actually offer agritourism activities, things like corn mazes and farm markets and hay rides and those types of things, has really increased a lot. So those numbers we see tend to climb every year. The other thing that I wanted to mention very briefly is we talk a lot about agriculture and we talk a lot about farms. But it's important that we keep in mind that the rural environment and the agricultural environment are not always the same thing. However, many of the risks and the hazards are the same, and so are many of the resulting injuries and deaths. So some of the things that we see on the farm, like tractors,
like ATVs and UTVs, some pieces of equipment when you go into the rural areas that are not necessarily farms or ranches, and even in the suburban areas we see those. For instance, think about a lot of the lawn tractors nowadays are just as big as some of our small tractors are, and the hazards that are associated with them are relatively the same. So the first thing that I want to mention, and this is near and dear to my heart, having grown up on a farm, is that there are a lot of benefits to children that are raised in the farm area and in rural areas. And those benefits definitely can vary a little bit from farm to farm or from area or from home to home. But we know that there tends to be a lot of room for kids to play. We know it tends to instill a lot of passion, love, and respect for the land. And you can read some of these other ones that are also on there. Most importantly, though, we know that youth that work on farms, it teaches those youth a good responsibility, and it instills a very good work ethic. The other thing I wanted to mention is that some of our most recent studies are indicating that it also impacts health in a very beneficial way. We know that children that are on farms, young children on farms, tend to have less incidence of asthma, less incidence of allergies. And so there can be some very, very big benefits to having children and youth raised on farms. On the flip side of that, though, we know that there's a lot of challenges and risks as well of raising children in these rural areas and on farms. Child care can be extremely challenging in rural areas. We know that instilling a love for farming and being safe while you're doing it can be very challenging. And you can see some of the other things as well, but probably one of the things that is the most challenging and what we're going to focus on today is the risks that are associated with injury and death. And so what are those risks and what are those concerns related to injuries? Well, a couple of the things to keep in mind is that injuries are oftentimes more traumatic than in other childhood injuries. So there's a lot of extremely dangerous equipment on the farms. PTO shafts, it's easy for somebody to very quickly get pulled into one of those. Tractor runovers and rollovers can be extremely hazardous. So the injuries that children can experience in a farm or a ranch, on a farm or a ranch, can be much more traumatic. They can be loss of limb and even loss of life. And those, of course, can result in some long-term disabilities that impact not just that child, but the entire farm enterprise. There's also psychological impacts, not only on the victim, but also on the responsible adult involved and on the family itself. And there's economic impacts, the cost of the care for the child, the loss of the labor, the parents potentially can't work, or if it was a hired youth, that youth has a loss of income. So there's economic impacts as well. And also, one of the other things to keep in mind is that there are child labor regulations out there, but there is somewhat of a limited impact that they can have, and we'll talk more about why that is in a little while. One other thing that I just wanted to mention is that parental perceptions can play into this as well. The studies tell us that many parents simply do not see the farm environment as dangerous. There is oftentimes, we hear this over and over again when we work with farm parents, is, yes, I heard about that child getting injured, but, you know, that was really unlucky of that family, and those types of things happen to other people, and it was just bad luck on their part. Oftentimes, parents will perceive safety as being obvious. In a particular incident, it's like, well, we know better than to do that, or that's obvious that that shouldn't have been done. The other challenge that we sometimes have is that farm parents and farmers will distrust information that comes from safety professionals, and oftentimes will have a negative response to those they see as arrogant and condescending. And even though these safety professionals may not be trying to come across that way, sometimes they are perceived to have come that way. And so these factors can also make trying to communicate safety strategies a little bit challenging. When we talk about what is actually the problem, though, I wanted to just take a moment to touch on this. And the first thing that I wanted to mention is that every day on farms and ranches, about 33 children are seriously injured. And when we're talking about seriously injured, we're not talking about a child that's falling down and scraping their knee. We are talking about injuries that if these children were hired to work, they would actually have to take time off of work because of the injury. We also know that 60% of the injuries that occur on farms and ranches occur to children that are not working, okay? We also know that a child dies in some type of agricultural-related incident about every 3 days. And we know that for youth that are working in agriculture, that more of these youth die working in agriculture than in all other industries combined. We also know that one of the reasons that these working youth are injured and dying working on farms is because that oftentimes they're doing work that is not consistent with their abilities. So a little bit of a note about the numbers. These numbers may be underreported, and we know they probably are. There is no central database for child agricultural injuries and fatalities, and few mandatory reporting requirements. For instance, even for the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, for youth that are working on their own family farms, the reporting requirements are different, and a lot of those incidents may not be captured. So this data that we have is pieced together from various data sources, and we know also that oftentimes the site of incidents are not always reported as farm or ranch, and so that's another reason for incidents to be missed. So what we're trying to say when we point out all of these things is that more than likely these numbers are underreported, and some studies estimate they may be underreported by as much as 50% or more. When we look at what's causing the injuries and fatalities, we know that fatalities, machinery, and most notably tractors is the #1 cause of fatalities on farms, followed by motor vehicles like ATVs and UTVs, and drowning. And one of the things I wanted to mention about drowning is when we talk about children and youth drowning on farms, we're not talking necessarily just about swimming holes and farm ponds and irrigation ponds, but we're also thinking about things like manure lagoons. And depending upon what source you look at, some of our statistical sources also list engulfment in grain as drowning because of the suffocation mechanism that's involved. As far as actual non-fatal injuries go, we know that falls are the most common, followed by animals, and then again, the machinery in the vehicles, the tractors and the ATVs. There are, however, solutions to these problems, and we're going to talk about what these top 5 safety strategies might be. And one of them is very simple. It's simply to keep the kids away from tractors. We know that tractors are the #1 cause of fatalities for children and youth on farms. And so if we can keep small children away from tractors, it would help reduce those numbers tremendously. We know that tractors cause over 40% of accidental farm deaths of children under the age of 15, and yet we know that 4 out of 5 farm children regularly ride the tractor despite that scary statistic. There are some free posters available. This one here says it's easier to bury a tradition than a child. There's a couple of other versions of this. One of them, A Quality Time, talks about how the tractor is not the place to spend quality time with your child, and there's also a 75-pound child one. If you contact our center, we're happy to mail some of these out to you at no charge to you. A second safety strategy that's very effective with young children is to simply keep young children out of the work site. We know that agriculture is one of the most hazardous work sites in the United States, but we also know that it is one of the few work sites that children of any age can be found at. So if we keep these kids out of these work sites, then we greatly reduce the chances of them being injured. Childcare, of course, is always the best option. If we can have the kids in childcare and just completely off the farm or out of that work site, that's always the best option. We know, though, that there's a lot of child care challenges associated with rural areas, though, and so sometimes it's just not feasible, or the hours may not be consistent with what you need, or something along those lines. So we recommend then, in those instances, that children be placed in a safe play area. And the area should be fenced to prevent them from running out in front of equipment, and it should have proper ground cover. There should be supervision provided, and the play areas should also be play equipment should be age appropriate. We have a booklet called Creating Safe Play Areas on Farm that provides information on all of these different types of things, and it also is free. So just contact us, and we're happy to actually ship it out to you. It's also one of the resources that is shared today electronically, and so you can find that as an attachment as well. The third strategy is to ensure that age-appropriate work is assigned to youth and children. You remember me saying that one of the big causes of those fatalities to our working youth is the fact that oftentimes these youth are doing work that doesn't match their abilities. We know that teens especially tend to be very impulsive. They tend to be risk takers. They're hesitant to ask questions, and they don't have the experience that adults do. So it's important that we match whatever task we're assigning to them to the abilities that they have. And we do have accessible agricultural youth work guidelines that will help you to do that. There is a section on these guidelines that says, can youth do this job appropriately? And it actually highlights the abilities that the youth needs to have in order to be able to do the job. These guidelines are available in multiple languages. They are modifiable for skin tones and equipment colors. You can change both of those. They are available in multiple formats. You can print them out. You can download them as a PDF. We have printed ones that you can order. You can actually go onto the website, and they're available interactive, where you can just answer a series of questions and interact with them. We also have topic-specific booklets that actually explain in really good detail exactly how to use these guidelines, and provides additional information on things like child development and supervision. The farm equipment booklet is actually another one of the resources that's available electronically today. We also have booklets on animals and gardening, and these booklets are available in hard copy by contacting us, or electronically if you want to go out to the cultivatesafety.org website. The fourth safety strategy that we want to talk about today is ensuring that the environment is as safe as possible. And that actually has two different pieces to it. The first piece is, as much as possible, either to eliminate or reduce hazards. And so just try to understand what the hazards are in any particular task or environment, and then try to reduce those hazards and address them as much as possible. One of the biggest hazards that we have nowadays with youth is distractions. They would much rather be on their phone oftentimes, or if they think they have a text message, they may look away from the task that they're doing in order to answer that phone or answer that text message. And so it's important to understand how to address those hazards, and also how to provide personal protective equipment for things that they're doing, so that they have the right type of equipment that they need. Now, there's a couple of different things that we have that can help you with this. The first of them is that we have multiple different types of online tools that you can access that will help you to assess your environment. If you are dealing with a farm, you can go out to the Safer Farm app, and that will help you provide a tool that you can use to inspect different areas on your farm and help you identify what some of those hazards might be. The Farm Mapper tool also helps you to map them out, and it provides that information to local fire departments so that if there's an incident on your farm, they know where all of the things are on your farm. The agritourism website is designed specifically for agritourism operations and helps increase the safety on these types of operations in order to protect people that are visiting. And of course, the Agricultural Youth Work Guidelines that we talked about before also list some of the most common hazards, or those hazards that are most likely to cause injury, and also some of the most common or most effective protective strategies. So there's a number of different tools available to address this as well. And the last safety strategy that we're going to offer is to provide training for work tasks and ensure that those youth are proficient at that task before you turn them loose to do that task on their own. So when you provide appropriate training, for instance, if you have a youth that is going to operate a tractor, not only should they go through a tractor certification course and understand exactly how to operate that tractor, what the hazards are on that tractor, the importance of wearing seat belts and operating a tractor that only has a rollover protective structure, but you should also be able to see them successfully operate that tractor at least 4 to 5 times before you turn them loose and send them out to do a job on their own. So there is supervisor training that helps adults understand how to do, what they need to think about and what they need to consider when they're supervising youth. And there's also safety videos as well that you can use for training for bending, lifting, and climbing. And again, access for all of these things is available on that Cultivate Safety website. So I mentioned earlier that we would talk a little bit about regulations and what are the federal child labor laws. So one of the things to keep in mind is, first of all, that federal child labor laws have certain exemptions on them. And the first one is that they don't apply to family farm youth. So if you have youth that are working on a family farm, these child labor regulations don't apply. If their parents own the farm, these regulations don't apply. If the job that they're doing is classed as hazardous for agriculture, those jobs are banned for youth under 16, which is unlike non-agricultural jobs where that age is 18. And there are exemptions for certain tasks, things like operating a tractor. If they go through a tractor certification course and follow some other guidance, then they can do those tasks for, depending on the task, sometimes as young as age 14. Restrictions and guidance are also included in these as far as age, school hours, wages, and a whole lot more. Now, state regulations can vary, so you'll need to check for that as well. Okay, and there's a website there which has information that you can find for visiting. If you would like to find out some more information on some of these incidents, you can go out and visit aginjurynews.org, and you can actually search this website, and it will bring up actual news articles of different types of incidents, both for children and for adults. And so it's a great website to find examples of things if you're going to be doing presentations or if you're just curious about what's happening in your area. We also have attached a child egg safety brochure, and the website is listed here for Cultivate Safety. If you would like that information as well, you can either order them or you can download it. Again, it's attached to this webinar. Moving forward, we talked about the benefits, the challenges, the problems, the causes, and some solutions. What about actually implementing this? I'm going to turn this over to Amy Rademacher now, and she's going to highlight a program that is truly boots on the ground. Amy?
Thank you so much, Marcia, and thank you for the group that's joining us today and CSN for having us present. So yes, I work at Carle Hospital, and I'll show you that here in a minute. And my job here over the last 19 years, we've grown, but it is to help with prevention education. So I go out and I do a lot of programs out in the community. 100% of what I do is considered community benefit. We work on training for EMTs and firefighters to have a quicker response, a more effective response, and also not to have other people injured. And then providing information to our healthcare providers as things come up and things constantly change with whether it's chemicals or mechanisms of injury or things like that. So I spend a lot of time on this first bullet at the top, but we do offer a number of programs. When we look at Carl Hospital, the hospital itself is number 4. That's where I am based, but Carl has greatly expanded. We now have 5 different hospitals. We are the level 1 trauma center in the area, so these incidents that are severe often come to our area. We cover 44 counties within those hospitals. We have over 1,000 providers, nearly 10,000 employees. So it's a very big operation that Carl Health now covers. Our programs, so more specifically, the programs that we offer are emergency response training, progressive ag safety days, which is what I'm going to focus on here today, school assemblies, an emergency action tube project, similar to the Safer Farm program that the National Farm Medicine Center has. Rural mental health programs has become a big one for us, and other prevention messages upon request, of course. I pulled this up just to show you kind of, I didn't put in 2020 because nothing with 2020 is normal, but you can see kind of our bulk of our programs happen through our school assemblies or our safety days. And our safety days, our progressive ag safety days, are based during the school year. Unfortunately, if we try to have events on the weekend, it's really hard to get people there. So we focus on our schools. You'll see here, though, progressive ag safety days, most of the time I reach about 1,000 youth each year with a progressive ag safety day program, and I'll show you some pictures, and we can talk about that here in a minute. But when 2020 came along, all spring programs were postponed till the fall, and the fall one was moved to 2021. So that had a huge impact on our programming and our outreach. So what is a Progressive Ag Safety Day? Progressive Ag Safety Day is a national and even an international program that provides safety education through the local community experts. So there's curriculum that they provide that's evidence-based. This is where they use things that the National Farm Medicine Center has put together, or a number of our different centers across the United States and even in Canada. They'll look at that material, that evidence-based information, and work on curriculum that's age-appropriate, that meets safety requirements, and it really helps you lay out a safety day. The reason that we use the Safety Day program is for the curriculum, the insurance, and each student, when they attend our Safety Day, gets a free T-shirt and a goodie bag. So the main piece to me is the backing and knowing where that curriculum comes from. How do we select a community and what topics we select is based on if we can get more support in that community. So whether that's Extension or Farm Bureau, 4-H groups, companies, our communities that we select are based on community partnerships. It's not just me alone. We use teachers and administrators to help us pick our topics, so we know that when we are picking those, it's pertinent to the community that we're presenting in. Really, it truly is a proactive rather than reactive type of program, and that's the way that we take all farm safety. Obviously, the more hands-on the event is for children, the better, which has been a big challenge going virtual. Schools need things individually packaged for each of the students, so we have to look at our costs associated with that. We have to look at shipping, and unfortunately with COVID, we also lost many of our volunteers. At least at this time, we can't bring those volunteers in. So here in my screen is fuzzy for me, but up in the upper left-hand corner, you will see the Progressive Ag Safety Day. We're doing one on PTO safety, and the left-hand is station. Now, how these work is they're on a scheduled rotation, so it's not a free-for-all type of experience where you'd walk up to a booth. Kids are divided. Everybody goes to a certain spot. Usually they have 10 to 15 minutes, and then we rotate. So they get that safety message, that hands-on piece in different topics, and then they rotate to the next location. Okay, I have lost control of forwarding, so if someone can advance the slide, I'd appreciate it. Okay, ladies?
We are advancing the slides.
Okay. If you are on the slide, I cannot see it, but if you're on the slide with the, on the upper left, it should look like guns being crossed. Obviously, these are training guns. They are in orange and sometimes in red. They are obviously not functioning, but we're talking about and having the kids experience how do we transfer those safely across the fence. So that is our gun safety. Bottom left, you'll see a student dropping an egg in a helmet, and we're talking about the safety of and the importance of wearing helmets during ATV safety. We have relay races, which they're getting ready for in the middle. Sometimes our Air Life helicopter will come to our events, and the Illinois State Police have a session in the bottom right hand. We do 3 safety days in the spring and 1 in the fall. I hate to jinx myself. We've only ever had to cancel 1 just because of the threat of severe weather. Until COVID hit, we were running along pretty smoothly. If you advance to the next slide, the upper left, you'll see a gentleman. It's one of our state police officers. He is showing using a black light rather to show residue on the student's hands. When they get into this station on meth awareness, they're asked to pass something around for people to look at, and on it is glow germ. So for those of you who are familiar with glow germ, that material transfers onto those kids' hands, so we can demonstrate that. Tractor overturns are in the bottom left. The upper right is a chemical safety relay race, and even down on the right in the far right side, excuse me, there's someone running with personal protective gear on, and then we also have another ATV presentation taking place. Behind the scenes, so if we want to advance the slide to behind the scenes, obviously the success of Safety Day events run mostly on how things can run behind the scenes. Our success is based on that. We've been fortunate that we have many great volunteers and many that are repeats and come back to help us. While our primary focus is always the education of children, it's also important to recognize our volunteers and make sure that they have a meaningful experience. We want those return volunteers. So you will see a couple different pictures. We're feeding them. We're celebrating an anniversary of the Progressive Ag Foundation. You'll see kind of a rough schedule there of how we run a day and a map. Every volunteer and student in our program has a name tag, and then we make sure the media and every volunteer checks in. So we use those name tags as our way to keep track of making sure we have the whole premises secured, because we do scatter when we do this like at a fairgrounds or a park. We are in various areas, and we're in a lot of areas, so this is one way we can keep track of that. We do have some children that can't be photographed, and we need to make sure that that we keep track of that as well. So a big pool of volunteers. I was figuring the other day in a presentation, during a given spring, I'll have close to 150 volunteers. So we prepare for the students, but we also must prepare for our volunteers. We offer continuing ed units for our teachers through our local regional office of education, and then we cover that expense for them. And that makes it a worthwhile experience as well for the teachers. Right now, we're going to have to justify even more so the importance of a safety day. It's not just a field trip. And what are the values that we're producing given that students are so far behind? Luckily, we've been able to use our curriculum and the curriculum from Progressive Ag Foundation to work with teachers and make sure that they meet those requirements for their classroom. So if you advance to the next slide, what did 2020 look like? So you'll see in the upper left, I am sitting actually at screens running our Progressive Ag Safety Day with some pre-recorded stations, and then we have open discussion about them and activities after they watch the videos. Obviously, they're not outside, they're masked and they're in the classroom, so we have to bring things directly, as I had mentioned, to their desks. If you see in the bottom, center of the bottom, you'll see a card with an A. That bag, that package right there is what we've named the activity bags. And every single student gets one of those with the activities that they can do right at their desk, and then take them home and share with their parents. And a lot of what we do is talking about how they can share this with their parents and share this with their siblings. We have some volunteers in the upper part of the image stuffing goodie bags for all the kids, and on the right hand side you'll see some of the treats that the participants are able to take home that local businesses have donated, and other activities you can see that kids are working on there. And we'll go to the next slide, and there's a number of sponsors, and I'm not here to talk a whole lot about the sponsors, but all these sponsors are extremely important to the success of our Safety Day. Some of them are larger corporate donors that donate to the entire Progressive Ag program. Some of them are our local sponsors that donate specifically to their Community Safety Day. Some of them, like State Farm or Country Insurance, they will have both a national impact but then also contribute locally. Some of those sponsors also provide our speakers and our volunteers. So it's very important to build those partnerships, and we're very grateful for those. We usually have more than 30 sponsors locally that provide something for the bag. They provide an in-kind item such as earplugs or safety glasses. I had one company that donated a bunch of unpopped popcorn that we needed to put in our activity bags. So a lot of donations in various forms, and they all play a vital role into the success of our program. The next slide says program evaluation, and on the left-hand side you'll see a survey. We call it a survey, not a pretest, but it really is kind of a pretest. We don't want the negative connotation around the word test, and we don't want to create anxiety for the students, but we have them answer these 4 questions before our Safety Day begins and before they get on the bus. We ask these same questions to see what they have learned and what knowledge gain we have had during our Safety Day. So you'll see the questions on the left, and then just a couple of the examples on the right-hand side of how this particular Safety Day, what the responses look like before and after. The next one that says program evaluation has a participant report form and a volunteer report form. Those 2 forms are created by the Progressive Ag Foundation, and we use those for every single Safety Day. And you can see some of the questions. What's something that you learned? What are you going to do when you get home? What did you like most? Our volunteers, we want to make sure, like I said, it was a meaningful experience, so we ask them questions there about that. If they make sure that they felt the students were safe, we definitely want our students to be safe at a Safety Day. Overall, how well they thought that the effectiveness was of our Progressive Ag Safety Day. A few years back, we decided that we really wanted to dive more into what the teachers were thinking about each station, because as any of you that have worked in this type of arena know that sometimes your speaker and your activities can make or break a station. And we've seen that from time to time where we will have one presenter at one Safety Day and the students absolutely love it, and then we'll go to another Safety Day with a new presenter and it completely is the opposite. And so we really wanted to evaluate our speakers, our activities, and our stations and make sure they were age appropriate. Now, the best way for us to do that was to ask the teachers and to get their input. So we created a teacher and chaperone report form that you'll see, and just one question there, but we really are trying to get at if the content was appropriate, if the instructor was prepared and engaging, and how helpful was the instructor during that experience. Then we have 2 more slides. Then the following program evaluation is a little bit different. In 2018, we were looking at how do we prove the effectiveness of Progressive Ag Safety Days, or how do we prove that what we're taking out into the community and teaching is effective. So at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we sent out a questionnaire to all the parents or guardians of children that participated at one of our Progressive Ag Safety Days between 2016 and 2019. Now, in all honesty, a lot of the responses were from those parents whose kid had just been in Safety Day 3 or 4 months ahead of time. But we didn't have a huge response rate for the ones back to 2016. This allowed us to do a more in-depth evaluation. Excuse me. Need a drink here. Safety messages over a period of time. We were looking at retention. We were also wanting, we used SurveyMonkey to do this evaluation. Not only what had they retained and asking them questions about what they remember, but also asking the parents if they've noticed any change in the child's behavior. And so you'll see a couple of those questions here. How often did or do they ride on a tractor while someone else drives? We saw a nice shift there from a few days, a year, and to never. And then question on the right-hand side, where are they, were or are they ever in wagons of grain, trucks that are loaded with grain, or bins and grain? So it's very important that those types of questions, what we wanted to see is changed behavior, not just change in knowledge. So there were 42 questions for this survey. Approximately half asked about the demographics, and the other half, like I said, asked questions about what they remember, and then they would ask the students those questions, and then also what the parents observed. We, of course, completely rely on parents' response. So could they have shifted these answers to help our cause? Yes, I suppose they could have. That's just one nature of the study, is it could have been skewed by parents, but we're optimistic that it wasn't, and we have had an impact. And then the last one slide was about retention. And we would ask those same questions or similar questions about roll bars, grain entrapments, and things like that, the importance of PPE at the end, those same questions that kind of resonate with the pre- and post-test surveys. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Marcia and let her drive this bus, but that's a little bit about our program.
Thank you, Amy. Just really quick, I wanted to just kind of bring up something. This is one really important way that all of you can actually help weigh in on this conversation. And this isn't necessarily just regarding agriculture and rural communities, but this could be in town as well. And you can see that on this social media post that somebody posted, and they were talking about how old were your kids when they started working machinery. And you can see this relatively small child on this fairly good-sized Z-turn lawnmower. And I deleted out a lot of the interim type of remarks and stuff, but there was a lot of people going, my son started at 8, my son started at 6, whatever the case may be. And finally, Janet Davidson from Progressive Agriculture Foundation stepped in, and she said, you know what, there's some great guidelines to help you sign age-appropriate tasks. And she put in the link for the Marshfield Clinic Research Institute's Youth Work Guidelines. That's our Ag Youth Work Guidelines. And I think it was important that somebody stepped in, and I didn't see this, so I'm grateful that she did. And notice that she didn't say, you know, oh, you guys are off your rocker or anything like that. She simply said, here's where you can find some guidance on how to do these jobs safely and how to assign these tasks safely. And so I think it's important that all of us, when we see these types of things on social media, you know, if you see kids that are people taking young children on tractors, posts like this, that type of thing, that we all be safety advocates. And there are guidance out there, and this guidance is available in English, French, and Spanish for the media guidelines, and it kind of gives you what some of those do's and don'ts are if you're not sure. And so you can go out, and this will give you some information, these types of resources, again, available on cultivatesafety.org. And just to mention, these are not the only resources we have that are available in multiple languages. All of our agricultural youth work guidelines are also available in English, Spanish, and French, as are some of our other resources as well. So we know there's a lot of benefits and delights for raising children in rural areas, but we know that there's a lot of risks as well. So when we can make farms, ranches, and rural areas safer, then families can take advantage of those benefits, and children can grow up to live a long and healthy life. And with that, this is our contact information for both myself and Amy. Thank you for being with us today, and I think we might have a couple minutes left for questions. I'll turn it back to Marla.
Thank you so much, Marcia and Amy. That was wonderful presentations, and I know I learned a lot from it. We do only have a couple of minutes, but following up on the concept, it started when, Marcia, you were first speaking, but for both of you, the one participant said, you know, the respect and acknowledgement is so important. So would you agree that one of the best approaches to the culture of the farming community is to be active in it, like getting to the point of, you know, this is great information, but what's the best way to have it accepted by the people who need it? And we can start with Marcia, if you want to start, and then go on to Amy.
I do think it's important that wherever that source of information is, that the farm parent or the rural parent, or even if it's in town, that they're a trusted source of information. And I think when we're working with farmers, that oftentimes the fact that I'm a farmer, I've actually seen it happen with my experience. It gives me more credibility with that group. And so that is actually a easy in sometimes, not always, but sometimes with some of these groups. But I've also seen some safety and health professionals who have built that trust over years. And even though they don't have a farming background, they've been able to build that trust. The other thing that we've been able to do is partner with people that these farmers do trust, Farm Bureau people. It could be them. It could be FFA egg teachers, things like that. And so we can partner with them to help get information out as well. So I think the important thing is that whoever that source of information is, it needs to be somebody that they trust.
Good point. Amy, do you want to add something to that?
I would just say yes. You know, after the first few years, it was even tough for me in this area. And once my name changed, all of a sudden I was part of the community. It was a little bit easier. But, you know, it's taken a long time to be that trusted source. And they do come to you when they need you. And the Farm Bureau and Extension, that puts even more weight and credibility. It really does help us. And I think many in this field would say, that's why we target youth at times, or that's why I target youth, is I believe I have a better chance of impacting them and maybe them impacting their parents than I do going directly to the parent.
Great. And for the city agencies, how would you recommend, and again, we can start with Marcia and then move on to Amy, how would you recommend city agencies engage with rural families related to injury prevention? And so what are the opportunities there?
Well, that's a bit of a tough question, and Amy may have a better answer than this, but I think it's going to depend upon the city and it's going to depend upon the community. But there are a lot of opportunities for engagement. You know, whether it's having information available at festivals, whether it's in doing the Progressive Egg Days and getting volunteers together and getting that done. some of it's even just to the point of making sure that when they hold events, that the rural community, the people that are out in the rural community, feel like they're part of those events and feel like they're welcome at those events. And again, it all goes back to kind of building that trust and then sharing that information. Amy?
And, well, unfortunately, I think we are going to have to leave it there because we're out of time. And thank you so much. There were questions there about the migrant community and Amish communities. So I don't know if you can, if any of your, if you can put any resources in the web links for those areas. But I do need to move us on, and can we, oh, yes, there we go. And let everyone know that we're very interested in your response to this webinar. There is a brief survey, and if you click on the actually, I've just lost my screen, but if you click on the link, there we go. If you click on the link, the SurveyMonkey link, we would love for you to fill out the evaluation for this program and you know, share your thoughts about it. And I know that the Children's Safety Network takes that very seriously and will use it for future webinars. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers. You were great speakers and a great audience. And I believe we're right on time, and we'll have to end it there. Thank you again.